What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Hour version of In the Huddle. I'm Vinny Bonsignore, I cover the Raiders for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and I host Raider Nation Radio in the Huddle, 4 to 6 p.m. Here in Las Vegas. You can also listen to it in various forms, streams, the podcast, all of that. I'm here with Les Kekahuna.
Good to be here, Vinny. Man, glad we're here. Glad we got another opportunity to talk about sports and the Raiders. The NBA Finals.
Well, the NBA Finals, man, going on right now. And first of all, it's weird, Les, because I don't have a rooting interest. I like both teams.
Yeah.
I like Giannis. I like Chris Paul.
Right.
I love these two teams came into the league together in 1968.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they were expansion teams together in 1968.
Wow.
That's going way back. But and they've had. Obviously, with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the Milwaukee Bucks won a championship very early on in their existence.
Yeah.
And they've had some pretty decent teams over the years. Phoenix Suns as well. They've been a little bit of a thorn in the Lakers side from years to years.
Yeah.
Normally, the Lakers take care of business against them. But it's great to see two new teams win a championship. It really is. And for me, having worked in Los Angeles, having lived in Los Angeles, not to try to brag on the Lakers too much, but because they were so good, the NBA Finals were kind of like a summer ritual in Los Angeles. It was every year that they were either playing very deep into the playoffs or getting to the finals, and there were some epic battles.
Yeah.
So and it was fun to be part of those.
So the last time we was talking, you had mentioned that you first got your first break with the Lakers, right?
Yes.
You said you went in and you introduced yourself and you met Dr. Buss, and then somehow you made an impact with him, and he ended up calling you back, right?
Well, yeah, and I was able to talk my way into a internship with the Lakers, which turned out to be a nice long run working in that organization, and just the memories that I have, especially now during the summer when it's the NBA Finals.
Did you get a chance though? Did you get a chance after that opportunity? Did you ever get a chance to cover the finals with the Lakers?
Well,
any one of the years that
not just working there, and I have some great memories of that. But then also when I transitioned into working for a newspaper, covered many NBA Finals during the Shaq, Kobe era, and then the Kobe, Pau Gasol era. I always think about this. One of my greatest memories was the Lakers. It's the Lakers 1988. All right, the Lakers 1988. We're in Detroit. This is when I was working for the Lakers.
Man.
We're in Detroit.
You was there with the team?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
At the Silverdome.
Okay.
That's where the Detroit Lions played. It was this big, huge stadium, and they would like curtain off one side of it to make it more of a basketball arena. But still, you could get.
So they held the games in where the Lions played.
Where the Lions played, yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was a crazy scene. It was Detroit Pistons, and it was the Pistons first.
Bad boys.
The bad boys. Exactly. Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer, Vinny Johnson, Joe Dumars. I can still hear the PA announcer in Joe Dumars because he was just hitting shots after shots. Anyway, it's Game 5.
Game 5.
Game 5 in Detroit, and the series is tied 2-2 at that point. Okay. And so, but the Lakers are just getting boat raced. Really? It's like just raining Joe Dumars, Vinny Johnson, and it's just like it was a butt kicking. All right, so where I was sitting was right alongside the Lakers bench, so I'm like toward the end of the bench, all right? And so it got to that point where it was over with, all right? It was probably middle of the fourth quarter.
You're right there by the bench and everything. Yes. But you can hear everything, right?
I can hear
all
everything.
The adjustments and
everything that's going on. And so there's probably about 2 minutes left in the game, I should say.
Okay.
And so Pat Riley just gives up, throws in the white towel. He just substitutes in. All the starters come out. Magic Johnson. Yeah. Now this loss put the Lakers down 3-2.
3-2, right.
Okay, going back to Los Angeles for Game 6 and 7.
Okay.
All right. So it was
it was on a 2-3-2.
It was
format.
2-3-2 format.
Okay.
And so the Lakers are going down 3-2. They're partying in Detroit. I mean, it was just
all they got to do is still
one
won in LA, right?
Yes.
That's their thought, right?
And so here comes Magic Johnson, all right, coming off the court. And this is when I was working for the Lakers. Okay, so He starts at the very end of the bench and tells every single guy, forget about it. We're gonna go win 2 in Los Angeles. Forget about it. We got this. We're gonna go win 2 in Los Angeles. The next guy, we're gonna go win 2 games in Los Angeles. We got this. And I was like, I went from working for Lakers, I went from like complete despair to if Magic believes it, I believe it. And so I felt better getting on the plane and going back home. And sure enough,
if the leader feels that way, we should be all right. We should be all right.
And sure enough, they ended up winning Game 6 and Game 7 to claim, and that was their back-to-back championship year. So they had beaten the Boston Celtics the year before. So I could still see it. I could still hear Magic just comforting everybody. Like, don't worry about it. We're gonna win. And you got to go win 2 games now.
I know it's hard.
You're down 3-2. Same thing happened with the Celtics.
I was just gonna say that, man. I actually was scared. I was worried. When we had to play them and beat them twice, I said, man, this is tough, man. To beat them 2 in a row, and I remember that finals, man. It was
2010.
The Game 6 was a blowout.
Game 6, Kobe had a fantastic game in that game.
Game 7 was.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I've been watching the games, the NBA games, and a few of these series have gone up to a 7th game. And following on Twitter sometimes and social media, Game 7s are just brutal.
Right.
It's by that point, A, you're exhausted as a player, but B, what they're doing. You're emotionally, physically,
you just
from a coaching, from a schematic. Yes, but also they know what you're doing almost as much as you know what you're doing, and vice versa. It becomes just a battle of wills. Okay, and what drives me nuts is watching fans that maybe aren't as savvy about it. They're complaining, oh, this is terrible basketball. Oh, this is bad basketball. I'm like, you have no clue because again, you're exhausted. You're at the end of your and plus it's just
you got to carry off the court after.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not bad basketball necessarily. It's just brutal. Everyone knows each other. The scouts have been and the coaches have been dialed in on that team and they know all their players. It gets to a point, I've talked to players where we know exactly what their play is, but when they call it out, we know what they're doing. So
what you think? You think in a Game 7, the team that wins is just a better team?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think
because after what you said, like everyone's exhausted. Everyone knows each other, what each other's plays are, and everything. So whoever wins Game 7 is normally just a better team.
I have to believe. Yeah. And I always hang my hat on this. And people are saying, well, the Suns are lucky because teams have gotten hurt, and
I don't believe that.
The way I look at it is winning a championship. Part of it is just being the last person standing.
Exactly.
That's one of the beauties of it, to be honest with you. And
I believe
the battle of attrition. Who's the strongest? Who's the fittest? Injuries are part of the whole deal.
Who was able to withstand the injuries, and prepare themselves so they don't get injured?
Right.
A lot of these guys. They don't get injured because they train hard, they work hard, they get their body work done, they take
and there's
care of
luck,
their body.
There's good fortune, no question about it.
You know what? Speaking of a Game 7, that I will always remember that. I'm gonna be honest, because I'm a diehard Laker fan,
right?
And I was worried, and I really thought it was over. You remember the Portland? When we played Portland, holy smokes! That series. I remember I was like, oh man.
Full disclosure.
This isn't good. I was worried.
I was at that game.
Yeah? You was at the game?
I was at that game.
Were you working for the Lakers?
I was working for the Los Angeles Daily News.
Okay.
I was a columnist, or no, I was just a writer covering it.
Man.
And my story, to paint that picture, the Lakers were down like 15 points.
They were down like double digits.
In the fourth quarter, going into the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter. I started writing my story. Like it was, because sometimes you do that. You're like, okay, this is where this game is headed. I'll get it early. I had start on my story, and my story was, I kid you not, I remember it to this day, was how Mike Dunleavy outcoached Phil Jackson in that series. And Mike Dunleavy and that Portland Trailblazers team.
Up until that point, he did. It seemed like at least he did.
Yeah. So I'm writing, some of the adjustments that Mike Dunleavy made, some of the mistakes I thought Phil Jackson made.
And what do you think that was? What do you think the good adjustments and the mistakes Phil Jackson made?
Man, I'd have to go back and think about that. But I mean, to me, the Lakers had the better talent, and there were just key moments, substitution patterns, late game, plays, play calling, rotations, things like that. But as I'm writing the story, kept looking up at the scoreboard. I mean, just what? It's a 5-point game. So I just delete. I deleted that story, and then obviously the rest is history. I ended up Gary Grant, who was drafted by the Clippers years ago. Was on the Portland Trailblazers. He was a point guard. He was at the end of his career, and he was basically the last man on the team on the Portland Trailblazers that year. So years later, I'm at a gym in Woodland Hills, and I'm working out, and I'm on an elliptical machine, and I'm looking over, and there he is. He's lived in town, and he's like looking at me, I'm looking at him. He's like, hey, I remember, So
he recognized you?
Yeah. So we started talking, and lo and behold, the game was on. Like they show the NBA Classic games and stuff like that. So he's like, oh man, and I said to him, I go, oh yeah, you were on that team, because you almost forget about it.
Right. Except for him.
He goes, I was on that team, and so then he started talking about it. I can't say exactly what he said. He had his culprit who he blamed for that loss. But he was what he did tell me was, I've watched that game so many times, and he goes, even watching it at the time, and then looking back after watching it a bunch of other times, he goes, there were just so many times in that game where, the ball's kind of like hanging on the rim, and if it just falls this way instead of that way, it changes the momentum. It ends their run, and it gets it back to us. But he was like, it was just one of those, and you felt it. You felt it slipping away. That's got to be the worst feeling.
And it's pretty crazy. You think about it, like, you would think the team that's down by 15 or whatever, 10 at that moment, 8 to 9, 10 points, the pressure's on them, but it's such, it's weird. Like, the one who's up is saying that the pressure was on them.
Well, they could start, they started seeing the momentum start to shift. Once it switches jerseys, it's hard to get it back. I don't know what it is, but it is. But, there was a lot of pressure on the Lakers, too, because if you remember, that was Kobe and Shaq's fifth year together, something along those lines, and they'd always failed in the playoffs. They had always Utah, San Antonio,
right? It was both of them.
Yeah,
because at that time they had Duncan and Robinson, so he was giving
Houston might have beaten them. So there was, and that's why they brought in Phil Jackson. They replaced
swept, I believe.
Yeah. So so for them to, and you kind of got the sense too that if they just get past, that was a great Trailblazer team. That was really, really good.
They had
Stottlemyre,
team, man.
Wallace, Scottie Pippen, Sabonis.
That's right.
There was.
They had a really good
Bonzi. Did we talk?
Bonzi Wells. Yeah.
It was crazy how good they were, and.
I'm glad it went the way it went, though.
and because who knows if the Lakers don't win right there, you never know.
Maybe they blow up the team. What I mean? A lot of times, like you said, on that 4th or 5th year,
right?
If you don't come around, it just gets to that point where they're like, you know what, maybe this isn't working. Maybe we need to go another direction.
I still wonder if they traded for Glenn Rice.
Oh,
Glenn Rice was on that team, but man, there were some. Wasn't that the Eddie Jones trade?
I believe that was Eddie Jones.
I loved Eddie Jones, man. Loved Eddie Jones.
Yeah, he could play, and he was kind of one of those. It seemed like he was one of those mentors. Was he? Because you covered, I don't know.
Yeah.
What mentors for Kobe, right?
Well, yes, he was. And Eddie had played at Temple University in Philadelphia. That's where Kobe. Went to high school. So they knew each other from way back when. Yeah. So
he was like a little brother too.
But at the same time, if you they had a pretty darn good. They had the guy that ended up I forget, from Pepperdine, but he ended up going to the Sacramento Kings and playing a good role.
From the Lakers?
Yeah, I'd have to look it up, but they had a pretty good little Jerry West putting the talent together. Drafting and trading and all that.
He has a good vision. Man.
Yeah. So,
man, jeez. Let me ask you, because why did he leave the Lakers? Jerry West? Especially because him being an alumni.
I think it ran its course. I think Phil Jackson.
Oh, okay.
There was probably something there, something there with Jerry and Phil
it seems like wherever Jerry West goes, man, he creates a winning environment.
Of course.
He went to Memphis and they started winning there, and then he went to Clippers and they're winning there.
Yeah. Golden State Warriors,
exactly.
He helped him get Kevin Durant.
Right. Wherever he goes, man, he just seems to always put together like a winning team.
Absolutely.
That's a winner.
It's a huge loss for the Lakers. It was a huge loss.
So you know what? I was just listening to you, right, and you had mentioned about Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Man, I just saw some things about Derek Carr's. I don't mean to get off of the Lakers, but Derek Carr's contract. What's going on with that, with the Raiders and
there's been some
planning to extend his contract.
Well, there's been some reports that they're talking. They're in talks, in serious talks, and I can say based on what I know, the reporting that I've done, nothing of substance is happening right now. I don't get the feeling that there's anything imminent, like it's going to start happening anytime soon. But that can change. It takes one phone call, to say, hey, you want to get serious about this.
What do you think? What do you think is like a good extension? Like what is something that makes sense for the team that you, based on your experience?
It's what's interesting about that is there's you can make an argument for either the Raiders or Derek Carr to either do it now or wait. So it's very interesting to watch, and I say that because if you're the Raiders, you've got Derek Carr under contract for these next 2 years, 2021, 2022, for a total of $42 million total. That's under market, okay? So it's basically $21 million a year for the next 2 years, which makes him about the 14th, 15th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. When you're talking about the reality of the salary cap, if you're paying your quarterback under market value, that's just a luxury because it helps you build
everything around them, right?
A little bit more. So,
what's his attitude been like about? I mean, being that you've been with the team a lot, been OTAs and all that. In terms of his contract, like,
I talked to him about it. Is it a big
deal to him, or he's just like, I rather.
I think it is, but he's not.
Build everything around me better so we can win.
I think it is a big deal for him. He wants to stay here with the Raiders, but I don't think he's going to publicly push it hard. And I think that, he feels like, hopefully it'll happen.
Because I like him, man. And I'll be honest with you, I'm glad we have him, and I'm glad the Raiders have him, and he hasn't been a distraction. You think about it, like you don't hear about him not wanting to report. Complaining about his contract, complaining about not having enough offensive linemen, receivers around him. He just seems like he's gonna do his job to the highest level, man.
What's interesting to me, and if you go back 4 years ago when John Gruden took over, everyone just kind of assumed, exactly. Everyone kind of assumed that John Gruden likes his cagey, savvy veteran quarterbacks, that he was going to immediately get rid of Derek Carr and bring his own guy in. He was going to bring his Brad Johnson in. He was going to bring his Rich Gannon in.